Bruce, before we start talking about Black Friday, I was wondering if you can tell me how much your personal relationship with horror changed or developed in the past 40 years.
Horror has not been, it's not my favorite category. It's not my favorite genre. I never grew up watching horror movies. The first Evil Dead was made because we were concerned that we would lose our investors' money, and we knew that horror movies were a safer bet as far as finding a distributor, not having to have expensive cars or clothes or name actors. You can do a horror movie with nobody in. You know, when Jamie Lee Curtis did the first Halloween, nobody had any idea who she was. Nobody knew anybody from the original cast of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So it was economically feasible, and it just was a prudent investment on our part. And then it sort of stayed that way. But we thought, okay, if you're going to make a horror movie, let's not dick around. Let's make one that won't be like the others. So that was the idea there. Over the years, we started to inject more humor into it. Evil Dead 2 is much lighter than Evil Dead. Army of Darkness, you could argue, isn't even a horror movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of, I think our stance has softened over the years. When we produce Evil Deads, they tend to get a little rougher. Fede Alvarez, who did Evil Dead 2013, his take was he wanted to go back and do it straight, do it serious, just like the first Evil Dead. First Evil Dead was kind of like a melodrama.
Right.
So his movie's very straight, very serious, and very scary. And then we just produced one called Evil Dead Rise. And that filmmaker, Lee Cronin, he also wanted to do it straight. So he's got a pretty straight version. We did Ash versus Evil Dead a couple years ago as a TV show. And with that one, all bets were off. We would anything that we could do that entertained us or amused us, we would do. It was about horror, but it was also about just having enjoyment of our own working on it.
Right. And I have to tell you, I have seen Black Friday just a few hours ago. And I have to tell you, this is a movie I thought I wouldn't see again, because correct me if I'm wrong, but when video libraries were still a thing, you've seen, like low budget monster movies and you loved them. But I feel like that they became so rare once video libraries started to disappear. So I had an absolute blast watching this, because it's something that I really needed again.
Well, I related to if you saw it how would you judge it on a video box? And so I think the poster for Black Friday, with that cast, we've all had some experience, Devon Sawa and some of the other guys in genre stuff. It's a pretty good video box cover.
Oh, yeah.
Like you could sell that video box cover.
Absolutely. And what I love about the movie is that you also get to see like two versions of monsters. There are like the actual monsters, but also the monster that you turn into whenever there is something on sale. And it's creepy, of course, because as the movie perfectly shows us, people don't necessarily buy what they need. They just throw everything into the cart, and all they want is to be the ones that get the stuff. And I was wondering, because every year we get to see, these pictures from Black Friday. What goes through your mind when you see how many people actually go to these shopping tours on Black Friday?
Well, in my opinion, they're wasting their time. They're wasting their time, energy, and they're threatening their safety. We kind of explain it in the movie. We talk about the fact that Black Friday is kind of a joke as far as retail goes. They put half a dozen items on mega sale, put them right up front, but nothing else is discounted. They'll say it's on sale. This is on sale. There's only a couple of things on sale, and because they got to pay for those sales, they can't give TVs away cheaper than they made them for. They got to make it up somewhere else. So, yeah, a couple of things are on sale. A couple of things have great bargains, but the rest of it, not necessarily. So, I mean, I would never risk injury for a doll.
Right, exactly. And it's so funny because whenever friends from America visit us around that time, they always laugh because Black Friday has started to become a thing here as well. But they are like, wait, what? You don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but you have Black Friday? This is like,
Yeah. Well, you can blame the capitalists on that. You know, capitalism loves to travel more than culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Bruce, as a huge fan of practical effects, it was
Yeah.
such a huge thing for me to see these creatures in the film.
Well, yeah, normally we went back to guys in suits, you know.
Yes.
Bob Kurtzman did the effects, and I go back with Bob to Evil Dead 2 from 1986. So that's how long I've known Bob Kurtzman. So
Wow.
I felt very confident working on this movie because I knew that Bob was on it. And, you know, he's an old school guy. He's been around a while. He knows how to do this stuff. So it was fun. I thought Casey Tebow did a good job. He's the guy who did mostly videos before that, you know, music videos. So there wasn't a guarantee that this thing would be watchable, but we all gained a lot of confidence in Casey as we went along. He had a lot of energy. He did have ideas how he wanted to shoot stuff. And what I like about it is the tone. I call it the Breakfast Club with carnage and mayhem.
Right.
So if you took a movie about angst of working for somebody else, of bad working conditions, and then you threw in carnage and mayhem, that's sort of what that's like, because there's a fun sociological component to the movie that you don't normally get in movies now.
Yes, absolutely. And would you say, because there are some people that believe, it's like a myth, they believe that CGI is like the child of practical effects, but it's actually two different things. It's like, 3D animated movies are not like the follow-up of cartoons. It's two
That's
different
right.
things as well. And so,
Well, a friend of mine who's a cameraman, he explained it this way. He says the weird thing about digital is that it defies optics in that you can have a monster go from here to here within one frame, and it distorts how you would normally see stuff, and your eyes have to sort of adjust to it. And digital blood has never looked as good.
that's
So
true.
to the point where Fede Alvarez, when we did 2013, Evil Dead 2013, he wanted to be able to take something and cut into a prosthetic arm that had pressurized blood because he wanted to see where it would go, because you can't predict it. And the
Right.
actor can't predict it. They might get it right in the mouth. The camera guy might get it. It might shoot straight across the room. And so
Yes.
what Fede did, he used the digital to hide the tubes. All he did was he had everything practical. So the only digital was to hide how he did it. He just painted it all out. But he wanted the real blood, which just makes sense. Pressurized real blood, nothing beats it.
But that's amazing because every take on that scene would probably be completely different because the blood would go in a different direction.
Absolutely. That's the fun of it. You look out and you see all the crew covered in masks and garbage bags over their bodies. And they don't know where it's going. They have to protect the equipment.
Right. So Bruce, I'd also like to talk about your character, and I have to tell you, I fell in love with him, even if he thinks a little bit too much about figures, and he, of course, his motivation is, to deliver the money that his bosses expect him to deliver.
Well, he's also, if there's a problem, he thinks corporate will solve it. You call the corporate main office, and you get
Yeah,
them. How would they do it? You get them to help you. And in this case, corporate's not going to help.
exactly. And I was wondering, whenever you came back to Evil Dead or to any project, how did you make sure that your real motivation is, the passion for the project and the story you are about to tell, and not the 6 to 8 figures that somebody else is expecting you to deliver on a busy weekend at the movies?
You always have to just work for your own artistic ability. If it makes money, that's great. But, probably half the projects out there don't recoup their money artistically.
Yeah.
So failure is a part of what we do. You throw stuff up on the wall, and some stuff sticks and some stuff bounces right off. And Sometimes you don't even know why. I look at movies now and I see 3 and 4 movie stars connected to a movie that I've never heard of. And it's up there on streaming. And you're like, I never heard of that movie. They made that movie. They shot that movie. They paid all 3 of those movie stars like real money. And I never heard of it and never saw it and it never came out. But here it is on streaming. So it obviously failed. And there's hundreds and hundreds of those that fail. For every Marvel movie that makes $1 billion, there's probably 100 movies that fail.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately.
So failure is part of what we do. But as long as you try not to fail artistically, like I have no problem if something fails at the box office, as long as I felt I did my job, that I brought to my character everything I could. I helped that production get everything done. I did promotional for it,
That's what counts. Yeah.
If I feel like with this movie, honestly, over the years, I've adjusted my expectations. A lot of low budget stuff never gets out into theaters. Never. It'll go right to streaming, right to some service somewhere, or in the old days, DVD or video, where you sell it foreign somewhere. But this was pleasantly surprising because it got into select theaters here in the States, which is, to me, I was like, what?
You were surprised.
Oh, I was. What? We actually got into theaters? Great. Okay, cool. Which theaters? Select theaters. So, you have to it's like the ticket app Fandango. You call that up.
Yeah.
Type in the movie, see if you can find out if there's a theater near you. So hopefully this Friday for me in the States, I can go to a local theater. We'll see. I'll find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of failure, because your character, once the monsters show up, he realizes that this time he will definitely not able to deliver the figures that are expected from him. And so he is kind of demotivated by that. And I was wondering, because we all have moments like that, we want to deliver in our jobs on what we do. We want to deliver. And sometimes we have a good feeling about delivering, but for whatever reason, we end up not delivering on a level we want to deliver. And I was wondering, whenever you experience such moments in your career, how did you make sure you don't allow that disappointment to demotivate you or to even make you lose confidence in your skills?
Well, I was replaced last year in a role. I was replaced for the first time. They wanted to go in a different direction. I shot for one day on a TV show. It was going to be over 7 episodes. They hired me for, signed a contract. And I do the first episode, and then they're getting ready to do another one down the road. And I get a word through my agent that they're replacing me. And so I thought to myself, okay, they can do that. They're the ones who put up the money. They have a full right to replace me. But if they don't have a reason to replace me, they got to pay me everything they promised me. Because if I did my job, because I got on the phone with my lawyer when you hear they're going to replace you. I got on my phone with my lawyer. I said, okay, so what kind of deal do we have? He says, well, it's a pay or play. They have to pay you either way. They hired you for this job. And I said, his name is Bill. And I said, Bill, I knew all my lines. I did not argue with the director. We had a very good relationship. I did not have any issues with the star of the show, the woman. We got along great. I was not hungover. I was not drunk. I was not high. I performed my job. I interacted with everybody in a very constructive way. So I told my lawyer, they replaced me because of their personal taste. It was not anything that I did incorrectly. I didn't call the studio and call them an asshole. I didn't shout somebody down on the set. I didn't embarrass myself. Because I would say to my lawyer, look at the dailies. If anyone's really concerned, look at the dailies. My dailies are clean, meaning I'm not embarrassed about my work. So that was weird. It had never happened before. And you could be tempted to think, wow, maybe you suck. But I know that I did everything that I could do. And so they paid me for every episode because they knew that I had done my job.
Yeah.
They were replacing me because they wanted to do something different with that character. They wanted to take a different approach that they didn't feel like I was that guy. So you could get bummed out about it, but I've been around long enough to know how producers think, to know how studios think, to know what their rights are and all that. So they cut us a check. We took their money. See you later.
But you found out through other sources that they replaced it. So it's not
no, through my agent. They called my representative.
Because I feel like the right thing would have been to talk to you and so that you.
No, they never. No, that's why you have representatives. It's better when you're negotiating. It's always better to go through an intermediary. That way, it never gets ugly. The producers did place a phone call to me after the fact, after it was over, where I could say, folks, thanks for the gig. I'm sorry it didn't work out. And we left it at that. So, and they didn't really provide any concrete information. And I didn't push them because at the end of the day, I don't care. It's not my concern. If that's something they want to do, it's not going to be cheap for them. They had to pay me off. And they had to go back and reshoot the scenes that they already shot, which was like a half a day. That's not going to be cheap. So somebody felt it was worth that money, All right.
Oh, man. So crazy.
I should have bought an NFT with my money. I should have bought Bitcoin with that money.
So Bruce, there's also a scene in the film where we get to see your character Jonathan and Ken in the bathroom, and while Ken is checking the top of the room, your character goes like, "What are you doing? This is against the rules." And Ken responds,
"Right, that's against the code."
Yeah, and Ken says that, circumstances have changed. And I was wondering if you do remember a specific moment from your career where where you kind of had to break the rules because the circumstances around you kind of forced you to.
You do that all the time. If you're filming a scene and it doesn't work, it's either not funny, not scary, not compelling, something. If there's something wrong with a scene, that's when you look at each other, the writer, the director, the other actors, and go, how do we feel about this, guys? So we're going to try and address this. So I've been on film shoots where I had the ability as an executive producer and as a lead actor, like on a show, let's say Jack of All Trades, a silly comedy I did years ago. We had days where we didn't use a single word of the original script. We threw it out because it was terrible. And we had to put it on its feet and shoot something that day. So we just made it up all day long. And nobody said anything because they didn't have any better suggestions than we had. And they couldn't deny the fact that the scene wasn't working. So you have to sometimes take matters in your own hands. Other times, writers are very powerful, which is sort of a misnomer. But some writers have the ability to say, don't change my words. It's called the Paddy Chayefsky clause. Paddy Chayefsky was a very good writer in the 50s. He wrote a movie called Marty with Ernest Borgnine, and he won an Academy Award. And he got to have in his contract, actors do not change my words.
Wow.
And I got it. If you're a great fucking writer, you can do that. But if you're not a great writer, you're full of shit because you're ignoring the fact that we have to put this on the road. We are the ones who have to land this airplane. You're writing this, smoking a doobie in your apartment, thinking this is the best dialogue ever. And you don't interact with anybody and you don't say the words out loud. Well, now when the words are said out loud, they sound clunky and weird or not what you want. We got to fix them. I never try and change the plot of any scene, but I'll say to a writer, dude, this is a mouthful. Can we thin this out? It's too wordy. There's too much going on. There's too much repetition. Can we have them just go boom, 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 boom like that? So a good scenario is where you work in tandem with the writers. An even best scenario is when you work on sometimes half-hour format, like a sitcom. You'll do a take and the writer will come in with the director and they'll pitch you a whole new set of lines that they think might work better. That's always my favorite, where you do a take, you do the best you can, and then you think to yourself, Is there anything else we can do to make it better, especially if it's a comedy or something that needs to be a certain way? So I like it when everyone is spitballing up to the last minute until they hit that slate that we're trying to figure it out. The old filmmaker Howard Hawks did a lot of like Cary Grant movies back in the day. Mm-hmm. He'd get the actors together in the morning and they would rehearse the scene and they could try out anything they wanted, any new lines, any new bits, blocking, anything they wanted. And once they agreed on it, then they never changed it because then they had to commit it to film. And you need that repetition so the sound guy knows when to get his boom over to you, when you're going to say a line. You can't ad lib after we've practiced all this. So he let actors ad lib and do all their stuff, got it out of their system. And then once they agreed on what the scene was, they never changed it so that technically they could then capture it. It's a great way to work, but some inexperienced writers feel their words are very precious. Please don't change my words.
Yeah, right.
Great. There's a writer, Aaron Sorkin, who's like that. He's like, don't change my word. He says he writes how an actor should breathe.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And I'm like, this is me. He would fire me in about 2 minutes.
No.
I have to be part of the process. I don't wake up in the morning thinking, how can I ad lib? But if somebody needs some help, I'll jump in. Let's go. Let's fix this scene.
Of course, so, your intention, of course, is to make it better.
Make it better. Or if it's bad, make it not bad. Make it not as bad.
Right.
So we don't always have the solutions. Actors certainly do not. But I like an environment. Look, it's a creative industry. It should be creative. Mm-hmm. And everybody involved should be participating in that creativity, not just the director, not just the writers, not just the actors.
Absolutely, exactly. And what I also enjoy about the movie is that, yes, it's of course gory and funny and everything, but you never forget about the characters. There are always moments where you actually share some background stories with us, which makes you care for them. And we also get to see a scene where Ken and Chris are having a discussion about, being the employee of the month and wasting potential. And I was wondering, because there are so many great artists out there that never get a chance to fully use their potential. Sometimes it's because they stand in their own way. Sometimes it's other reasons. And I was wondering, when you started to discover your potential, how did you make sure you grabbed that potential so that you can turn it into the skills that we know you have today?
Well, to me, it's work ethic. The word will get out over time whether Bruce Campbell is an employable dude. Like, is he too expensive? Does he show up on time? Does he know his work? Does he play well with others? All these things factor in over time. And so I just try and make sure that I am as professional as I can possibly be so that I can be a desirable actor to hire. There's a lot of factors that go into making a decision with an actor. And these days, I actually have more experience than most people on the film set. I have 40 years under my belt. So no one can really pull a fast one on me. Like, the director can't lie to me anymore and tell me about a certain shot, how it's all going to work. I'm like, bullshit. I know how this works. I know how a film set runs. So if it's not running adequately, I'll come up with suggestions to help it run better. A lot of information has actually been lost in the last 40 years of how to do things effectively, cheaply. There's a lot of tricks that just get lost because they're not passed along from filmmaker to filmmaker. But I think I've always tried to work hard. I've always tried to be a good participant so that my reputation, it doesn't take a hit. I want my reputation to be good.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's your character says that people don't know what it means to work in retail. And I was wondering if that is something you can that also counts for the film industry, because for people that are from the outside trying to look in, it's very easy to say, hey guys, when are you doing the next Evil Dead? You know, because most of them don't know that it takes much more than just Sam Raimi saying, you know what, why not? Let's do it tomorrow.
Yeah, nobody knows how anything works, but these days people are way more interested in finding out how the sausage is made. People didn't care about behind the scenes before. Now, for some reason, they seem to be all over it. You always see specials about the making of, behind the scenes. You'll watch an episode on TV, then they'll have another presentation afterward for 15 minutes about behind the scenes, and they'll do
Yeah.
interviews and stuff. So people, I guess, are more interested in that. I don't really know why. I don't think they should know everything. I think a lot of the movie industry should be couched in mystery, but they do think we work a lot. They think it's, blowjobs and limousines, and that's all that's going on. But really, what I've found is it's just years and years and years of long, hard hours of work. That the average, I did a TV show called Burn Notice for 7 seasons. We averaged 14 hours a day. The average crew member worked 77 hours a week. That's almost twice the American work week of 40 hours. So your personal life is for shit when you work on those projects, because you start out at 7:00 on a Monday morning. By the time you get to Friday, all those advanced hours have put your call time now 11:30 in the morning. So you're going to work until 1:00 in the morning.
Wow.
We didn't call them Friday. We called them Fraturday.
Wow.
Because we always worked into Saturday. And then you go home 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday. Your Saturday is screwed because you're waking up at noon or 1:00. So you have one day to get your shit together on Sunday. Then you go right back to work Monday morning for 14-hour days. And you do that for 7 years. It's a drag, and people don't realize it's that much work. Actors disappear for months. You realize, God, I haven't heard from this person or that person for months. It's because, they're on a film set working for 6 months on one movie, and they're not coming up for air because they got to go do it. And then you see actors everywhere. You'll see the same actor on every TV show everywhere. And you go, wow, where have they been? Well, they've been working. Now they're out of the box and they're promoting. So you'll see certain actors everywhere right now because they're ready for a movie to come out and open or do whatever. Normally someone you just wouldn't see that much of. And the only reason they're out running around in public is because now they're selling it.
Right, exactly. And it's so crazy because nowadays, of course, a lot of seasons come out the same day. And then, of course, people binge watch them the same night. And they ask, okay, so when is the next season coming? They don't know that it takes at least another year for it to be produced.
They're getting it. They're getting the idea because they learn quick, because if there's no other episodes for 6 months, there's nothing else they're going to do. So they just go to another show and binge another show. You binge other shows until your other show is ready to drop more episodes. We've learned a lot about television viewing, I think, during the pandemic and movie viewing. Absolutely. And I think we realized we watch more TV than we ever admitted.
Yes, for sure. Bruce, I can impossibly let you go, of course, without asking you about Evil Dead Rise, of course.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, how different is this movie going to be compared to the ones that came before?
Different. This one's dark. This one's pretty serious. Good, strong performances. It's a single mom who now has to deal with this book. These days, it's more about the book. Is where that book gets around. That book is handed around, passed along. People try and get rid of it. They try and bury it or destroy it, and they really can't. So this book just keeps popping up. So really, it's just another story of what happens if this book appears in this particular group of people's lives and how it intersects. Lee Cronin is a very serious man. He's a very serious director. Sam Raimi picked him because he did a pretty good job on a movie called Hole in the Ground. He's a very atmospheric director. And, Sam thought, let's give this guy a shot. So it's going to be really good. We've seen a rough of it already. And it has all the components that we need. It's just like anything. When you see a rough version, it just has to be tightened. Mm-hmm. But, we're good. We're in good shape.
Oh, that sounds so great. But what would you say is the main challenge, about honoring what came before and allowing a new director to bring in his own vision?
We're pretty good with new directors. We let them have a lot of creative leeway, but the basics stay the same. The book, the possession, the rules of how you get rid of them, every new heroine or hero has to learn how to dispel the evil, because it's one thing to conjure it. There's certain ways that you conjure it, and then there's certain ways that you get rid of it, and not everybody figures that out easily.
Right. What
So
about?
there's a lot of, this family is not the same at the end of the movie.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
Well,
there's.
they're gutted. The whole family's destroyed. These people get possessed, brothers and sisters, sons, daughters,
Oh man.
So yeah, it's a family affair. This one's a family affair. They're all related in this one.
Wow. What
So
about
I
the?
think that makes the possession and killing your siblings,
Mhm.
things like that, even harder. Because in the
Oh
original Evil
yeah.
Dead, there was only one brother sister combo, Ash and his sister Cheryl. The
Exactly.
rest were just friends. Now this is all, they're all related in this household.
Wow. Which makes, of course, the choices they will have to make, of course.
Much more excruciating.
Oof.
Yeah, and it's urban. We're out of the woods now.
Yeah. And what about the camera work? Because of course we know that the camera work has been so important in the previous films. Well, what can we
Well,
expect?
we stole half of the crew from Ash versus Evil Dead.
Oh wow. Right.
The cameraman, Dave Garbett, a lot of the people who work on cinematography, production design, because it was done in Auckland, New Zealand. My buddy Rob Tappert lives there with Lucy Lawless, his wife. And, he knows every crew member in town, and he knows all the good ones, and we got the good ones. So New Zealand has great crews, but they don't have a deep bench, because if a couple big productions come into town, they'll take all the good crew members and you're left with ones that are okay, but not as good. If you time it right, Rob Tappert's appeal to crew members is work in Auckland. You can go home every night to your family, rather than Peter Jackson works on distant locations.
Yeah.
No one's home for
Right.
months at a time. Rob's like, come work for me. You'll go home every night.
Right. Let's
And
bring
it
it
works
home.
with Kiwis. The Kiwis like that because they like to just go home. They don't, Americans, for some reason, they think they love working 18 hours a day. Kiwis are like 12 hours is plenty, man. You work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Fuck you. We're out of here. We don't want to work anymore. And they're correct.
Right.
Whenever
Exactly.
I hear filmmakers brag about 18-hour days, I say to myself, you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
Hercules and Xena trained me as a director back in the early 90s, that the Kiwis wanted to go home. And the way their system works is you have to ask the crew heads, you have to ask the departments, can we have some overtime? You ask them and they can say no. And they do say no. They go, nah, we're all right.
Yes.
Whereas in the States, you send out an announcement that says we're working for 2 more hours tonight. You tell people, you don't ask. But in New Zealand, because those crew, they're not paid as much, so they want certain rights, which are don't abuse my hours, because they didn't get as much in overtime. Americans make tons of money in overtime, not the Kiwis. So the Kiwis were like, hey, 7:00 tonight, we want to be done. And as a result, as a director, I could write all my shot list out on a piece of paper, and the assistant director can put actual times next to the shots to keep me on track to be done by 7. And it's great discipline. I learned tremendous discipline. Come back to the States, these guys had horrible hours. I came back from working on Hercules and Xena to X-Files. I did a guest star on X-Files.
Wow. Yeah.
Those hours were unbelievably terrible.
Oh wow.
Like amateur hours. Like so many. I asked a Teamster, the guys who drive the trucks. They set up the base camp beginning of the day. They're there at the end of the day. I said, how many hours do you work? The guy goes, I'm done by Wednesday. I swap out with a whole new guy. They've already gotten the hours that they need by half the week. They can get rid of an entire guy, bring in a whole new person and start a whole new week on like a Thursday.
Wow.
So one guy will work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, get all his hours in for the week. They'll bring in another guy in Thursday, Friday, you know. So it's great to work. I like more disciplined systems to make. The US system is very, very poor. They reshoot stuff all the time. They waste money. We could do a lot better in the US.
Oh, wow. Seriously, Bruce, thank you so much for your time today. Seriously, it was a pleasure talking to you. And just let me tell you one thing. The very first time I saw Evil Dead was, when I was about 8, 9 years old. And that was because I know. But, the reason is that my brother had to babysit me. And I was so annoying that he was like, you know what? You just sit down and I'm going to show you.
Shut up. I'm just going to put this horror movie on.
Yes. And he then left the room. And I, of course, was like so focused, So I'm happy to tell you that your film was the first one to give me nightmares. But I'm super happy it did, because if I would not have started watching horror movies at that young age, I would have a completely different relationship to it today, because it's just like it's just
another like genre to you now.
Yeah, it's like just part of me.
It's not forbidden. Horror used to be forbidden.
Right, exactly.
In the old days, there was like, as an actor, you would do porno would be the lowest bottom.
Right.
And then horror was just above it.
Oh, and man.
Now, all these years later, because of Walking Dead and other shows like that, horror is just another genre now. It's no longer taboo in any way. It's great.
Right, exactly. Absolutely, absolutely.
Like horror is mainstream and weed is legal. Life is good.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So, Bruce, again, thank you so much for your time. All the best for Black Friday, and thanks again for your time.
Appreciate it. See you next time. See you for the sequel.